Welcome back to Sailing El Haleo! Since entering North Carolina, we'd been dealing with some kind of crappy weather between the wind and the rain, and after about a week and a half of that, we were ready to get back on the road. We decided to make a mad dash for our home away from home, which is Belhaven, North Carolina, and we did so with stopovers in Mile Hammock Bay, Morehead City, Oriental, and then a mad dash back to Belhaven. I guess we might as well go ahead and get right into it. Grab a drink, climb aboard, and let's get going. After spending a couple of days in Topsail Sound waiting out high wind and rain, it was time to get back on the road again. I did stay in Topsail Sound for one extra day, and that's because the Onslow Beach Bridge, which does have to open up for intracoastal waterway traffic, is about 20 miles up the intracoastal waterway from where we were. And that had been closed for 2 days due to the high wind, and I wanted to give it an extra day so any traffic that was backed up at the Mile Hammock Bay anchorage could get cleared out and make it through the bridge, because that was our next anchorage. I was a little concerned about leaving Topsail Sound. When we came into the sound, it was right at high tide, and I did see a shallow spot of 6 feet on the depth gauge when I was coming in. I was a little bit sloppy on the entrance. It's a very narrow channel, and it was during a weekend, so there was a lot of boat traffic that I had to work around. While we were in Topsail Sound, I did study the sonar charts a lot closer, and there is a lot of shoaling in that area because we are close to an inlet. So they're not 100% accurate, and it did indicate that shoaling could happen in that area. So I studied the sonar charts very closely, and I charted a course to get out that I thought would be good. And even so, we left right at sunrise, which was at high tide. So if that 6-foot section, if we had to go through that again, we would have enough clearance at high tide. And on the way out, with the course that I had laid in, we actually saw 10.5 feet the entire way. So it is possible to get into Topsail Sound with a deep draft boat even at low tide. The first day after leaving Topsail Sound, we were only going about 15 miles up the intracoastal waterway to an anchorage called Mile Hammock Bay, and it's right on the edge of Camp Lejeune. And I wanted to stop there for a couple of reasons. One is that Mile Hammock Bay is a basin, and that's the other spot where I had problems anchoring, which I mentioned in the last episode. And I wanted to test out the theory about why I thought that was happening. So when we got up to Mile Hammock Bay, I tried to set the anchor, and sure enough, it drug. And when I pulled it up, same sludge. I had a real problem setting it, so did other people that stayed there. So I think I'm onto something with this basin theory. So I'm a little giddy about that. But anyway, the other reason why we wanted to only go 15 miles that first day and stop at Mile Hammock Bay is the next section. It's about 40 miles all the way up to Beaufort or Morehead City, and that's really the next good anchorage. So I couldn't make the entire 55 miles in one day, but I could make the 40 miles in one day, so I decided to stop at Mile Hammock Bay and then do the long trek the next day. And as we left Mile Hammock Bay, here you can see all of the sludge that was on the chain. I did actually wash down the chain as I was pulling it in, but there's just so much sludge in that basin that I had to hose off the deck, so it wouldn't get in the puppy dog's fur. We did get up quite early in the morning to leave, as the next run up to Morehead City was about 45 miles away, and we knew it would take most of the day for us to get there. And we hoped we wouldn't have to wait for too many bridge openings. We did get stuck at one for about 20 minutes, but that was about it. And this day was nice. The wind was projected to be in a favorable direction most of the day, so hopefully we would be able to use the head sail to get a boost. And about halfway across Bogue Sound, or halfway through Bogue Sound, I should say, the wind did start to change direction. But by then we were on the home stretch, and the current was with us most of the day. So that worked out really nice, and we got to Morehead City about an hour and a half before sundown, but it was windy, so unfortunately I couldn't fly the drone. We left Morehead City early the next morning, not that we had that great of a distance to cover that day. I believe it was only 30-ish miles up to Oriental, North Carolina, but we did have to go through the Adams Creek Canal, and if the tide is against you going through that canal, it can be a bit of a struggle. So if we left early in the morning, we would get a boost from the tides, and we got a push all the way through the canal, which was awesome. And if it looks a little rolly and rough while I'm pulling up the anchor here, it's because it was. We had anchored for the night right next to Sugarloaf Island in Morehead City. And the first time I stayed here on the way south, we had stayed there for I think 3 days to wait out rain, and it was great. It was nice, calm, everything. But it is right by the Beaufort Inlet. And this morning, it was a Friday morning. I don't know if it's because it was getting close to a weekend or what, but the boat traffic going out of that inlet was absolutely insane. And this is not a no-wake zone here, so we're talking three-tiered fishing boats, recreational sport fishing boats going by at full speed. And starting at about a half an hour before sunrise, it just got unbearable. We were rolling so bad. I counted over 30 large fishing boats go through while I was pulling up the anchor, and then as we headed out towards the inlet. And I know a good 20 or 30 went through before that when we were down below, because I could feel them all. So very heavy traffic. I don't know if it was just an anomaly, I was there at the wrong time or whatever, but yeah, I mean, oof. If I did ever go back, there is an anchorage on the backside of Sugarloaf Island. I never even thought of stopping there. This one's closer to the ICW, but I can definitely see the advantage to staying behind the island and getting a break from that wake. So if you do ever come through the area, I would recommend anchoring on the backside of Sugarloaf Island. And here we are just approaching Adams Creek Canal, and we got here just at the right time. We had received a tide boost all the way up to the canal, and we received a boost all the way through the canal, which gave us about an extra 1.5 knots of speed, and it saved us a bunch of time. And I do have to apologize for this video. It really stinks. We were on a forced march of sorts. We wanted to make it back to Blackbeard's Cove, Marina and Pub in Belhaven. That's kind of our home away from home. And we put in a couple, probably, I think it was 4 long days in a row. And all I have are static shots off the front of the boat. We got into our anchorages late at night and it was windy, so I couldn't fly the drone. So unfortunately, this video stinks, which I apologize about. So the previous night we did make it to Oriental, North Carolina. And we ended up anchoring outside of Oriental in the Neuse River. And the Neuse River is huge and it opens up into Pamlico Sound. So it's not a good place to anchor, but the wind was projected to be very light that night. And I don't mind a couple of waves on the bow. It's just when you get hit on the side and you roll side to side, that's what really stinks. Bouncing up and down a little bit doesn't bother me at all. So I was hoping there wouldn't be a lot of commercial traffic coming through, and thankfully there wasn't. There was one big fishing boat that came through and went into Oriental. And I didn't want to go into the Oriental Harbor just because I had some conflicting reports on where it was okay to anchor and where not to, and I didn't want to piss anyone off. And it was going to be a calm night, so I figured let's just anchor in the Neuse River and call it a night. So we got up early the next day, and we had planned on going up the Neuse River, and you stick your nose just out into Pamlico Sound, and then you turn back up the Bay River. Once I got up the Bay River, I was going to anchor for the night in Gale Creek. There is a canal that connects Gale Creek and Goose Creek, and I don't know the name of that canal, but it is a narrow canal that goes through there. It goes right by Hoboken, North Carolina. And the tide was actually going with us. So I figured I might as well go through the canal, and that'll save us a bunch of time. I won't be fighting against the current the next morning. And we actually made really good speed through that. I think we were going around 6.5 knots all the way through it. And I was going to anchor for the night in Goose Creek. But because the wind was in our direction, I had gotten a wind boost most of the way up Pamlico Sound, so we were in pretty good shape on time. And I thought, let's just make a run all the way up to Blackbeard's Cove, Marina, and Pub. So we I can't talk. We left Goose Creek, we crossed the Pamlico River, we went up Pungo River, and then entered Pungo Creek, where we made it back to Blackbeard's Cove. I think we got there around 6 o'clock at night, so just a little bit before sundown. And here we are crossing the Pamlico River into the Pungo River. And we were able to use the head sail here as well. We were right on the edge of it luffing and being able to use it. So it's kind of threading a needle there, but it did give us about an extra knot and a half of speed, so it was awesome when we were able to use it. That day we did end up traveling around 45 miles, which for us is a very long day, but we did eventually make it back to Blackbeard's Cove Marina and Pub, and the puppy dogs were very, very happy to get back on land once more. And that's all we have time for this week. I would like to give a massive shout out to my Patreon crew. Without your guys' support, I would not make these videos, and my Patreon crew is Joan and Juddy Judnick, Val and Chris Alcorn, Denise and Eli Sackett, Joan and Jim Limbo, Sherry Erickson, Deb Shaw, and Matthew Spotten. Thank you guys so very much. Your support means the world to me. If you are interested in joining our Patreon page, there is a link in the description down below, and that'll take you to Patreon where you can sign up. And there you'll have access to hundreds of additional photos and videos behind the scenes. I try and update that 2 or 3 times a week with either photo updates or video updates, let you know where I'm actually at and what's going on currently. And you would also help support the channel, which would be awesome. If you do like our videos, please like, comment, and subscribe. That doesn't cost you guys anything, but it helps us out immensely. So, alrighty, I hope you all are well, and we'll see you next week.